After a few years doing Formula E and promoting electric cars in cities, we wanted to take the next step, to take this racing to the next level, to bring these races to places around the world that were being affected by climate change. That's how Extreme E came about, to showcase the technology of SUVs everywhere in every kind of terrain, but at the same time help raise awareness and take action. We realized quickly that not only remote locations are affected by climate change is having effects right here at home.
The concept of Extreme E is super simple. Climate change isn't new, but there's a lot of people on this planet that aren't engaging with it. And so we've got to find other ways of communicating about climate change. And what we're using here is a sport, and a sport for purpose.
Sport is an entertainment platform. People look at it as a getaway, I guess, from their everyday lives when people are crazy about sports. However, there is a responsibility, and I think that that's been neglected for a long time. But the fact is, it's a platform in order to push out good messages, positive messages, bring awareness to things that people that are watching probably didn't know.
When you think of a sport that classically hasn't been at the forefront of being responsible for the climate issues, to see a championship like Extreme E come in and offer a completely different take on it, and even act as a role model to other sports now.
One of the reasons of this championship is to send a strong message to the world, especially to the world of motorsport, that you can organize races in a more sustainable way, thinking about the environment, thinking about sustainability, and not only thinking about motorsport.
I think Extreme E is one of the coolest and most original championships out there. It's not only about the racing, it's so much bigger than that.
The best thing probably anyone could do for the environment is probably just to sit home and do nothing, but we still want entertainment, we still want sport, but we need to do it in a sustainable way, and that's what Extreme E are doing. Hyperdrive now.
Conceived as a race for the planet, Extreme E set out on a path to transform motorsport. Pledging to be a series led by science, Extreme E became the first racing series to enlist a scientific committee comprised of 5 of the world's leading climate academics.
I love the ocean. I kind of consider myself part ocean even. My mom knew I was going to be a marine biologist. She knew that way, way before I did. I'm here to document the ocean so that others can see it tomorrow, but also in future generations.
I was not really interested by science until I was confronted with ecology, and that was a discovery of the peace that nature brings to my soul, and therefore I was interested in contributing to that path of discovery and why we had this relationship, a spiritual relationship with nature, and do that through science.
When I went to the Amazon for the first time to visit the areas that I was studying, I started to realize that the most important thing to be concerned was the landscape was changing so fast. We started to develop the action plan that was going to reduce deforestation, with the whole government working together. And after 10 years, we had reduced deforestation by 80%.
I grew up in a coastal city of South Africa, and it was an amazing place to grow up because one day it would be behaving like the tropics. So thunderstorms, and then the next day cold fronts, and then thunderstorms back again. And the winds would shift almost on a daily basis. That converted then into a lifetime of studying the stuff to try to get to the bottom of the puzzle of how it all worked.
When the Navy started sending submarines to the Arctic in the 1960s, they wanted to have scientists on board to study what the ice was doing by sailing underneath it with a submarine. The first discovery actually of the thinning of the Arctic ice was my work from 2 successive submarine voyages where the thickness went down by about 15% between 2 voyages that were 3 or 4 years apart. From 71 till 2007 we showed that the thickness had gone down by about 40%. Nearly half the ice had disappeared, and that's the situation at the moment.
The scientific committee is such a great innovation that we've had, where we've brought the scientific world into sports. And we have 5 scientists. Each of them are experts on desertification, deforestation, melting glaciers, melting ice caps, sea level rise.
And what they give us is the insight on why this is happening. And most importantly, what are some of the positive steps that we can take that actually enable us to fight back?
I must confess that I was never a fan of motorsports at all. In fact, I had a relatively negative perception because burning fuel and making a lot of noise for fun wasn't really something that I considered consistent with my own values and principles. Then I learned more about Extreme E.
I was excited from the very first moment to be part of the scientific committee. I was going beyond talking to my peers in the environment arena. It's innovative, it's connecting different worlds, and that's where we should go.
For years and years, as a climate scientist, we were spreading doom and gloom without solution to hand. And Extreme E for us has been an absolute breath of fresh air because it holds the solutions in its hands and it's spreading the word like we can't as climate scientists. So it's been a spectacular platform.
Extreme E is really brilliant at getting hold of good scientists from different places that are inspired with this idea of doing science along with racing in an ecologically viable way. Suddenly people are realising how important climate change is to one's daily life, in fact to the future of the planet.
Extreme E has opened a new door for action that extends beyond the laboratories. It is precisely the role of science to push the boundaries of the possible every day. And the prerequisite is that we should not give up.
Designed with no playbook to follow, the championship sought to write its own rules when it came to the huge impact sport can have. Now in its 3rd season, Extreme E continues to set up legacy projects in each race location, ensuring a lasting difference is made long after the racing has finished.
Our legacy programs are really at the core of what we do here at Extreme E. It's something that really sets us apart from other motorsport championships as a sport for purpose. What we really try to do is highlight the challenges that the local communities face due to the effects of the climate crisis in the remote locations that we race in, but also we really want to educate and inform our audience on ways that they can create their own positive actions and also help them to live more sustainably.
I think when I first got involved in Extreme E, I underestimated the value of the legacy projects and the connection the series has to that effort. As I've been more involved now in year 2, it really is the critical part of the series. The racing is obviously why racers are here, but in order to make motorsport work in the future, sports I think have to have an element of responsibility or contribution to sustainability and towards more responsible values.
Legacy programs are a huge part of any Extreme E weekend and they all stand out in their own way, but Saudi is super special for me. They're recreating a whole ecosystem. It's going to be massive for the whole footprint of CO2 in the world, and we just get to be part of spreading the message, really.
NEOM is putting on a big project here to rewild a lot of different species. We've been rewilding sand gazelles and redneck ostriches behind us, but yeah, it's pretty special to see.
This is the biggest rewilding project in the world right now. It's the south of Belgium, this area, and 95% of this area is set aside to nature restoration projects. So this is all going to be green in many years.
We go to these amazing parts of the world, but we're not just sort of in and out doing our race program. We get to learn about what's happening firsthand with the environment in that area.
From the rewilding in Saudi Arabia to monitoring the habitats of salmon in Scotland, there's no doubt that technology and all the uses we have for technology today are a huge part and integral to the solution. To monitor the effects of climate change and then also how we're going to make a difference in solving those problems and then also how we're going to live differently in the future.
So we're going to be installing this IoT sensor in the water today, and it's going to measure the water quality and temperature of this part of the river for us.
With the legacy projects, I've been able to see why trees are so important when there's a river flowing and how the roots are keeping the dirt from eroding away and the water's provided to the other animals and creatures in that area. So there's a lot of things that I've learned being a part of the legacy projects that I could take back for myself and understand, how to better the environment.
Here at the Island Express in Sardinia, we're currently at a bee farm learning about how the wildfires a few years back had a massive impact on this area.
The old generation of beekeepers lost 30 million bees during the mega fire in Montiferro in 2021.
When many of us just hear wildfires and we just see the flames, but we don't really think of the big picture.
I think the thing to remember about bees is they're important to all of us. They're pollinators. So really without pollinators, we would be suffering from an absolute food crisis.
I've never been that close to a beehive before, but I think you feel super protected in the suit, and then you can have a good look and try and find the queen bee. And if there's a queen bee, it means the hive is healthy. It's incredible that Extreme E does stuff like this, you know, stuff that I would never think to do.
As fun as racing is, it should be the main thing of the championship, leaving a positive trace behind and a long-lasting legacy for this series. I was fortunate enough to revisit the ice caps in Greenland and revisit the mangrove planting in Senegal.
It's just amazing to see that they're picking up now. They're taking carbon out of the air and growing up.
When you go back to the places, you can really spend a lot more time with the community and see what's been going on there.
The wonderful thing is I was absolutely touched when I was standing on the ice shelf in Greenland and watching it melt. It had a massive impact on me, but I don't really matter. What matters is the drivers. The drivers can go through the same sort of experience I have and actually be able to communicate that very authentically. The opportunity to communicate with a mass number of people is huge, and that has impact. That changes the way that people think about climate change.
We tell the story for cameras, we put some light on the subject with the hope that down the road that conversation turns into action, support, and understanding from a broader community. And that's, I think, an important part of what we do here.
These legacy projects have also played a pivotal role in advancing scientific research. Earlier this year, drivers Katie Munnings and Clara Anderson ventured back to Greenland, the site of Season 1's Arctic Express, to collect ice samples that, due to new technology, can tell us even more about the state of our ice sheets.
When you were here 2 years ago, you took some samples. What did they show?
So Professor Peter Wadhams, he was analysing them at his university in Turin. We could actually see, you can see on the floor, there's like little black specks in the ice. Yeah. And he said that those black specks, when they analysed them, were carbon and hydrogen, and apparently that is what they suspect has been blown over from wildfires. And the main problem with that is the black absorbs sunlight. So when the sun is shining on it, it absorbs the sunlight, which means it heats up and melts even faster.
What will be the difference with the samples that we collect here today?
They've improved the technology at the university. They have the ability to delve into that and see if it's linked even further than they think.
The samples were then shipped to Professor Peter Wadhams in Turin, where the team there are using new technology to search for the presence of microplastic in ice sheets, in even the world's most remote locations.
We can do far more with our samples now than we could 2 years ago. The new technology, one of the most amazing machines is the Raman spectroscope. Instead of analysing for 4 elements, you look everything up in a gigantic encyclopedia and it gives you the spectrum of every known substance on Earth. When looking through a microscope, you could see the sort of background, which is the fibrous material that you're working with. But on top of that, you see these very bright nodules. And those are the things which are the microplastics that do the damage. We've always assumed in the past that microplastics are something that's doing bad things to the world because we're producing a lot of microplastics and it's all washed up on the beach and then pounded around by the waves. You get it broken up into small bits. But what's really more frightening now is that this poisonous collection of microplastics is found inside the stomachs of seabirds and kills them. You're getting the same thing going on in places where it's not obvious that it's being produced like that. This is the top of an ice sheet which is 3,000 meters above sea level. If we really discover that there's a substantial amount of microplastics in the samples from Greenland, then the implications are that there isn't anywhere on planet Earth which is safe for microplastics, even the top of the most remote ice sheet. And that then we really have to think what we're going to do about microplastics. We can't just sort of let them go.
With its pursuit to be the world's most sustainable racing championship, Extreme E enlisted the help of its sustainability partner EY. The partnership has helped monitor the series' footprint and ensure the championship is improving year on year.
Being the official partner of Extreme E in the context of sustainability has meant that we've done a couple of things. The first is that we've helped them to establish their social and environmental impact approach so that we are thinking about each race up front. We've also supported them on developing their sustainability reporting, effectively the leading mechanism for organisations to communicate on their sustainable progress.
What we want with this report is to be transparent about the actions we take, accountable for the decisions we make across the series, and hopefully set a benchmark both for ourselves and potentially for other series to learn from what we are doing.
So of course you might imagine we'd focus in on aspects like removing fuels and moving towards electrification, using flaxseed instead of carbon fibre, using rice husks for the tyres, which is normally thrown away. But the more important factor is that they consider a broader impact outside of the vehicles themselves. Whether that's minimising or removing all waste on site, sourcing food locally for catering, reducing the impact of logistics by not flying vehicles around the world. We're now moving towards the bleeding edge of what's possible in the context of sustainability. They invested in refitting out the St. Helena, which is one of the most sustainable ships of its size. And on that ship, everything is needed for each of those races. And it means that whilst there is a lag time between races, it creates the most sustainable outcome.
In addition to that, the championship remained carbon neutral for the second consecutive year. So part of the way the series ended up to be carbon neutral is our work with our legacy projects. Great examples include our 1 million mangrove planting project in Senegal, our work with UNICEF, an education program in Greenland, and with the TNC, the Nature Conservancy, in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. What we do is we encourage farmers to farm things like bananas, acai, cacao, rather than using cattle ranching, which is historically what people have done. What we want to showcase is that this is not just lip service. We follow through with actions. We're constantly seeking to improve, and we hope that other people can do the same.
No stranger to the knowledge that sport can be used to promote a greener planet is Formula One world champion and RXR team owner Nico Rosberg. In February of 2023, Nico announced his non-profit organisation, Rosberg Philanthropies.
I've always been supporting a lot of charitable initiatives, and this year was the first time that it all came together under Rosberg Philanthropies. And what we're about is really supporting climate tech, but also young children in need. The partnership with Oxford University has been incredible, sponsoring PhD students and getting them to engage with our various partners, like with Extreme E. It's been so valuable and insightful. Our student Varun partnered with Neste. He made a whole analysis of what needs to be done, starting with the Extreme E ship, but what can then also be taken into the entire marine industry, and because of course they need to scale globally to have a chance of having a real impact.
Over the summer I did a project in partnership with the Oxford SDG Impact Lab, Rosberg Philanthropies, Extreme E and Neste. I got to visit the St. Helena ship. This ship is still powered by fuel oil, so this project looks at how we can use alternative fuels to reduce the emissions of the ship, and also looking at what infrastructure is currently available to implement these new fuels.
Some time ago, I had the pleasure of visiting the Oxford University campus. The PhD students that we'd been supporting were also attending. I had a talk in front of all the younger students there to try and inspire them a little bit to also get supported and get placements in corporate, get their hands dirty, you know, with all the things that they've learned about. The partnership between Rosberg Philanthropies and Oxford University is really unique. These PhD students from Oxford are just incredibly knowledgeable and intelligent, so they can quickly find solutions, and it's just been incredible, the progress.
It was such a privilege to have Nico visit Oxford. He read up on all our projects and knew them thoroughly. He also took interest in how to take this forward, which was very exciting. Nico and Extreme E can champion sustainability through their platform in sport to showcase how you can reduce your emissions and become sustainable.
We all know that we're nearing a tipping point, and more than ever, I think we so need these ultra disruptive solutions now to help us with this fight against climate change. Sports almost has a duty to do this, and that's what I love so much about Extreme E, because Extreme is really trying to do that. It's at its core, to use the platform to promote electrification, now soon hydrogen mobility also. And I hope that other sports championships can also get inspired by Extreme E. So I think we're really generating a lot of impact there.
With just one race left of Season 3, Scientific Committee members Lucy Woodall and Richard Washington gathered to reflect on 3 years of electric racing, looking at how this innovative concept remains committed to making a lasting difference.
Well, thanks for this invitation to amazing room here in Oxford for us to talk about Extreme E. Of course, me as a biologist, you as a climate scientist, we sit on the Extreme E Science Committee. But I guess from your point of view, I'm really interested in understanding your thoughts about Extreme E and this idea of electric cars racing in really remote places. Like, how did that come together in your thoughts as a climate scientist?
It's not an immediately obvious connection, is it? I do remember thinking that these guys want to race electric cars unproven in remote, extreme places, dusty, cold, wet. I hope they've got a good set of engineers and an even better set of mechanics. But here we are, Season 3, one race to go, and those machines are really proven. They're extraordinary pieces of kit, and they've evolved so quickly as well. You know, if you think of the internal combustion engine, it's 140 and 150 years in the making and has had endless tweaks. And here we have a racing series done on the back of this new tech, this new way of powering machines, which is far cleaner. We are removing that heavy impact through CO2 on the atmosphere. But you need a lot of batteries. So next step along the line is to bring a power station on board the car in the form of hydrogen cells. And the waste product, instead of being carbon dioxide, is water. So you take one of those little goodies and you sit that in the back of the car, but you've got to make sure that the hydrogen that we're using doesn't come from coal. Otherwise, we're just back to square one with the fossil fuels. If we can get that stage right, where we produce clean hydrogen, delivering electricity, because it's basically chemical energy to electrical energy, we're looking at a technology which is going to take us forward.
I love the fact that you shared all those points around the innovations of the cars, the technologies, but I think there's also a point around innovations of the locations themselves, being able to think about having the locations at the forefront of the race, going to places where we can see climate change happening today.
Normally when it comes to motorsport, you see the racing happening on an existing track, some of them famous, some of them been around for decades and decades. But by virtue of the desire that Extreme E has to showcase iconic climate change venues, we've raced in places where there's been no track, where we've had to make our own. As a biologist and as a member of the science committee, do you have concerns about that?
Absolutely, at the beginning, that was kind of one of the big questions, and really wanted to understand what the plan was in the beginning of the season, but actually also what the plans are going to be in the future, right? So I think the philosophy of race without trace is really important, because this allows for new programs to come in, thinking specifically around the racetrack itself. I think is two things. Obviously, there is a social and environmental impact assessment taken, and this is acted on as well. I recall when we were up in Scotland, there was a falcon's nest up on one of the cliffs of that open cast coal mine. During that race, the media teams actually couldn't use drones because of the potential impact. And of course, it's a process, and as we think of other things that we can do, and that fits within that race without trace philosophy, then we can bring those in and ensure that over time this is getting even better, and then we have much more positive impacts.
Let's hope there's a domino effect following on from this, and the more that we can do to showcase that to the corners of the world, the more proud Extreme E can be of the messaging that we do.
I think every sport is different. I mean, Extreme E is very special, very specific to the movement where everybody can do something. The important thing is that we all go on the same direction.
We're often told that climate change touches every aspect of our lives, but there wasn't an awful lot of evidence that it had made inroads into sport until the Extreme E came on the picture. And Extreme E very boldly began to connect those things.
We learned about so many things that I don't think we would have learned outside of Extreme E, and it all just comes together in the fight of climate change.
Sport is a great platform to get people to interact, and a lot of championships are following the Extreme E route, and we need to continue pushing ourselves to do more for the climate, because in the end of the day, that's the main race that we need to win.
It's been great being part of the Extreme E journey and just seeing the momentum that it's building and showcasing how racing can be done in a sustainable way.
We're racers and we want to race in really anything with four wheels, but then also the larger purpose to be able to be part of the future of the automotive industry, I think was really important.
To do something that is contributing to the world in a positive way, that feels amazing.
It doesn't matter how much money you have. You won't buy a new planet. The planet we have is this one.
It's not that one person has to be perfect, but if we collectively come together and make small changes, we can have a huge impact for future generations.